Hello, I'm Earl Butch Graves Jr., the CEO of Black Enterprise. Welcome to the third installment of the Black Enterprise Virtual Town Hall Series of 2025, hosted by our partners at Nationwide. For this discussion, we have convened an expert panel of doctors to underscore why we must prioritize investing in our health to grow our wealth. As we celebrate the 55th anniversary of the founding of Black Enterprise by my father, Earl Graves Sr., we remain true to our mission of elevating Black excellence by focusing on solutions to drive lasting economic advancement and financial empowerment for African Americans. A central part of that mission is facilitating candid, solution-focused conversations with the best subject matter experts and thought leaders in business, politics, civil rights, public policy, and beyond. Wealth creation via innovative entrepreneurship, successful careers, and smart investing takes time. Simply put, the longer you live and the healthier you are, the greater your earning potential and wealth building capacity. In the words of Brookings Institute fellow Andre M. Perry, a speaker from our first virtual town hall and author of Black Power Scorecard, the ultimate measure of power is the longevity and well-being of a community's residents, particularly within Black communities. The challenge, the economic advancement of Black people remains handicapped by shorter lives, poor health outcomes, medical treatments, hospitalization, and the skyrocketing cost of prescription drugs. Consider this: nearly half of Black retirees leave the workforce prematurely due to the health issues and disability, compared to only 32% of non-Black retirees, according to a report from the Employee Benefit Research Institute. This is just one example of how health disparities are a significant obstacle to Black economic advancement. Our panel is obviously well prepared and qualified to address this topic. However, I will take the liberty of giving you the bottom line for this discussion. We can no longer afford to pursue wealth without prioritizing our health and longevity. We can no longer accept Black men dying during what should be at their peak earning years, or Black women living longer but too sick to afford it due to rising healthcare costs. We must change the trajectory of our health and longevity for ourselves and future generations. Ultimately, our health and well-being and that of our families and communities are up to us. We do not have control of the external forces, including a history of racially motivated medical abuse, inequities in the healthcare system, and harmful public policies that negatively impact our health and longevity. However, we all have the power and responsibility to fight for our own lives by making better, self-loving choices to not only live better and longer, but to leave a legacy of health and prosperity for future generations. This virtual town hall will explore what we must do now to achieve that objective. Now let's begin. As our moderator, Black Enterprise Senior Vice President and Executive Editor, Alfred Edmond Jr., starts the conversation. Over to you, Alfred.
Thank you, Butch. And thanks to all of you for joining us for this necessary conversation with some of the nation's most passionate advocates for improving the health and longevity of Black people as critical to our capacity to build multi-generational wealth. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior Vice President and Executive Editor of Black Enterprise. Our virtual town hall, Investing in Our Health to Grow Our Wealth, hosted by our partners at Nationwide, is our third of 2025. If you have yet to see our first two town halls, Economic Outlook for African Americans and the Future of Black Business and Entrepreneurship, I urge you to view them on the Black Enterprise YouTube channel or of course at blackenterprise.com. Even before the events of the past year and the era of COVID pandemic outbreak and recovery preceding it, inequities in healthcare affordability, limited access to mental health services, unhealthy lifestyle choices, and a racial bias in the practice of medicine have combined to place Black people at higher risk of every malady from heart disease and cancers to diabetes and depression. This reality is an ever-present threat to Black health and longevity and a constant drag on the ability to grow Black wealth. As I often say, especially to financial coaches, social media influencers, and entrepreneurs who promote themselves as wealth creation champions, it is hard to make money if you're sick or dead. It is past time for health is wealth to be more than a great social media hashtag or podcast title. We as Black people must fight for Black life, step by healthy step, to move the culture forward. The aim of today's virtual town hall discussion is to motivate you to make investing in our health and longevity a non-negotiable for our collective progress and prosperity. I am happy and excited to serve as your moderator for this discussion and to introduce our esteemed town hall panel. Dr. Michael H. Ford, nationally recognized leader in health and public health equity and Fortune 500 company director of health equity for the state of Maryland. Dr. Carina Tuggle-McDaniel, board certified bariatric surgeon and co-founder of Pro-Black Health Vitamins. And finally, we're joined by Dr. Philippe Douillon, MD, board certified neurologist and founder and CEO of the Inlay Brain Fit Institute. Thank you, Drs. Douillon, Tuggle-McDaniels, and Ford for joining us for this critical conversation, aimed at energizing our audience to gain clarity and confidence as they set health and longevity goals in their pursuit of financial wellness today and multi-generational wealth for the future. Let's get started. Dr. Carina, Dr. Philippe, Dr. Ford, and maybe I'll start calling you Dr. Michael, but I'm used to calling them doctor by their first name. But listen, again, thank you guys again for joining us for our latest virtual town hall. You know, we're all passionate about this topic. But again, for the sake of our audience, what we're really having this conversation around health is wealth, which everybody says it's a repeated thing. It rhymes. Everybody gets it. But we have been on a crusade in our respective roles and companies and careers. And I've been personally on a crusade to connect health, not as just a nice social thing or a political thing or a lifestyle thing, but a wealth thing. That if you're not serious about multi-generational health, you're not serious about multi-generational wealth. And I'll just kick it off the conversation with my own personal journey. I got serious about longevity when I realized that I needed to extend my earning years and that I had to be healthy enough to do it. And then, of course, health is about self-care. Self-care begins in your 30s if you want to be able to continue it in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And you guys all know about what needs to happen now if you really want to be able to thrive in your later years. I want to start off with you, Dr. Carina. You're inspired, or let's say motivated, maybe a different word, by the real things that you've seen in the patients you've treated and some of the outcomes that we were really trying to prevent.
Yes. So as you know, but maybe a lot of other people don't know, I've been practicing for over 15 years. And I trained at Howard in DC. I came to Atlanta. I've practiced in primarily Black hospitals. I'm a weight loss or obesity surgeon. I take ER call. So I see so many of us who are young in age, but old in disease. And I think a lot of us, when we think about stroke and high blood pressure and diabetes, we have a picture of our grandmother or someone old, like that's the face that we see. But I'm seeing 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds with these chronic old people diseases, and they are advanced. And there really is no good reason for that other than the way that society has lent to poor eating habits and lack of information and not prioritizing our health as really being our most valuable asset. Because yes, with science, we can live longer. You can go on a dialysis machine. I can give you a bunch of medications to keep you going, but it's bigger than that. It's really about those years, how many of those years will be healthy and good years. It's not just about extending the number of years we have, but it's about extending both the number of years and our ability to be healthy and thriving during that time to maximize our potential and our livelihood, and all the things that we have to offer.
Yeah, I want to build on that, Dr. Carlina. I'm glad you brought that point up right up at the front. So we're talking about what now, in some ways, people are starting to hear more about. Its health span and lifespan. You
Yes.
recommended a book that I've been recommending to everybody I talk to every time I have this conversation called Outlive, The Science and Art
Mhm.
of Longevity. And one of the premier, and then he's not the only one that talks about this, Dr. Peter Attia, because now it's become part of especially on social media, the lexicon of influencers who are in this space.
Mhm.
But that medicine as it's practiced today is designed to keep you alive by any means necessary. Like you said, you could
Yes.
live, well, we could find this, the treatment, the medicine, the machine that will extend your lifespan, if not indefinitely, far longer than our previous generations. But what we're
Yes.
talking about is also a health span, which is how
Hmm.
functional, how able are you, how long can you live those years disease free, as
Hmm.
close to fully functional as possible. And I think that's where sometimes we settle for, well, I'm not dying, but
Hmm.
increasingly there's economic, both personal and broader economic issues at stake when you live longer, but it costs you more and more and more and more to stay alive
Yes.
when we talk about healthcare costs. And so I do want to pivot to you, Dr. Ford, because I want you to kind of hit on 2 points. One, we're not here because we put ourselves here. There's an environment, there's a history, there are disparities both on the health care side and the costs of healthcare side that negatively impact Black people. There's a long history that brings us to this place. So one of the things I want to get out up front, this is not about saying, oh, it's our fault. We're stupid, we're lazy, we're undisciplined. We didn't get ourselves in this situation, but that doesn't take away the requirement is pretty much on ourselves to get out of it. There's not a cavalry coming to save us from this. We have to save ourselves. But talk about the broader issues that you champion around the environment and what gets us here and what we're still fighting now in terms of disparities in the provision of care, access to care, treatment of Black patients versus non-Black patients. Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so first, you painted the picture very clearly. A lot of where we are has historical ties. There's a lot of historical context when you talk about Tuskegee with the United States Public Health Service, when you talk about Henrietta Lacks and the HeLa cells that have been used for polio vaccine and even COVID-19 research, when you talk about even the sterilization, Fannie Lou Hamer, and a lot of pioneers who came to fight for what we wanted to take control of, and that was our health. And so I like to think of trying to reframe the picture of where we were can lead to a better calling for how we respond through taking control of what's ours. And so when we talk about health and wealth, first, let's just level set. You cannot have wealth unless you have health. Your health is your greatest asset. Believe it or not, people can tell you, oh, your 401k is your greatest asset. People can tell you get your Roth IRA as your greatest asset. Some people can say, buy your real estate properties and invest in real estate. That's your greatest asset. No, your health is your greatest asset. So, historically speaking, from the 1800s, 1920s, 1960s to even today, we as Black Americans are still fighting. We're fighting to take control. We're fighting against systems that have policies that can try to seem like they're eradicating what we've been building for, and that's equity. Equity is, in simple terms, the fairness, meaning that I, as a Black man, can hope for the same quality service as someone who might be in a white wealthy community. And your zip code is one of the strongest indicators of your health outcomes. And so when you talk about health span and you talk about lifespan, you have to understand that some of these factors come from the historical context when you have things like where you live and the lack of access of care. Matter of fact, there's a story I recently told in Chicago, Illinois, back in the 1970s. There were a group of Black medical pioneers, so Black medical students, Black doctors, Black nurses, and there was a city, Cairo, Illinois, and it had no medical access. There was no hospital system. There was no clinic. And matter of fact, if you were to access the next clinic, you would have to go to a town which was predominantly white, which did not serve the Black population anyway. So these individuals, known as the Black medics, Black flight medics to be specific, they would rent these small Cessna planes and fly to Cairo, Illinois to give that medical care for the Black community. So part of where we are today is, knowing that we have to take control of health, whether that means sometimes building our communities to make sure that we advocate for our own, sometimes meaning that we have to also tap into the resources that are like this town hall is an example of a resource where we're distributing information and also fighting the disinformation and misinformation. And in simple terms, misinformation, as some of you might know who are watching, is information that is not accurate. But disinformation is information that's not only not accurate, but you're intentionally spreading falsehoods. And so, when it comes to where we are going into the future, we have a lot of policies, as you all might know. HR 1, One Big Beautiful Bill, has some detrimental impacts on Medicaid cuts. And for me, I'm a director of health equity. So I've been working in public health for more than a decade now. And I'm a state director of healthcare for a major Fortune 500 company. And so with that being said, I get to see a lot of these impacts as they progress. And so part of taking control is tapping into your resources, tapping into community, and knowing how to connect with individuals and entities who can help you go from where you were to where you need to be.
So we had Dr. Carina talk about outcomes that we need to really address that she's seeing. You're talking about the history and the environment and how we got to where we are. And even though it is not, quote unquote, our fault where we are, what I love about my man, Dr. Philippe, is he's like, but there's power, and Dr. Ford, you just said the same thing, in taking control and deciding, yes, I can't control the environment. Maybe I can't personally fix all the disparities in the healthcare system, but I can take control. And in your case, Dr. Philippe, control literally and figuratively starts with the health of the brain, which is a relatively new kind of concept. We think of physical health and we think of emotional health maybe, and for a long time, and we'll talk a little bit about this as we get to the conversation, these elements were considered siloed, non-related experiences. But now we know, one, is all interrelated, but two, brain health really drives all health. So talk to me about, and I also want to get into us having to do the hard things that we don't really want to do. Often we hear the misinformation that allows us to do things that we want to do versus what we should do. And you know what I'm kind of hinting at. But talk about the importance of us focusing on brain health, particularly, and again, I'm 65, and I've come to the realization that I want to be healthy physically and cognitively. And I literally just came to this conclusion in the last few weeks. But if I have to pick one, I want cognitive. And therefore, things that help me maintain, brain health, getting sleep, avoiding stress, all these other things, giving up alcohol, not just avoiding it, is about how do I want my mind to function as I move into my later years. Because if you have a quote unquote healthy functional body, but you're dealing with major cognitive issues, Alzheimer's and other things, then it's almost like you lost the game, even though you thought you were winning the game. You lost the game at the end. You fumbled at the goal line. So talk about your passion and your career as a neurologist and focusing on brain health, which is a relatively new idea for everybody, certainly for African Americans.
So what if you don't have to pick between cognitive health and physical health, right? I spent a lot of time in Harlem, and we all know Harlem's been gentrified. But one of the things that I always find just absolutely fascinating is that the white people that have moved into Harlem, you always see them running. You always see them forming their run clubs. They're biking. They're walking all over the place. And for the most part, Black people are kind of like sitting on their stoops. Usually the weed smell is coming from them. And what I really find fascinating is that the white people are saying, not only are we moving here now, But because we are investing in our own health, 50 years from now, we're going to outlive you. And the Harlem you know today is going to look vastly different 50 years from now compared to today. And it's all because they're making decisions every single day to promote their own health. And like you said, the reality is this. One of the big problems with the healthcare system, which doesn't work for anybody, maybe it works for the people that are super rich, but it certainly doesn't work well for poor whites, doesn't work well for Black and brown folks, doesn't work well for Asian people either. But what I think we get really wrong is that we are far too specialized. We act like something that impacts the heart is not going to impact the brain. Something that impacts the gut is not going to impact the brain, right? The reality is your physical health, whether you are eating healthy, moving your body, getting enough sleep, whether there's inflammation in your body, that's going to impact your mental health, whether you're anxious or depressed. That's going to impact your cognitive health, how you're thinking, what your memory is like. Are you able to communicate effectively? That's going to impact your emotional health. Are you living in gratitude? Are you happy? Are you scared all the time? Are you living in fear? That's going to impact your neurological health, how your brain is functioning. We have one body and one brain. Whatever impacts the brain is going to impact the body and vice versa. And the reality is, I agree with you, Dr. Ford. There are systems in place that have been in place for decades, if not centuries, that make it much difficult for us to get the healthcare that we need. But I've got a problem when we focus on that, because there are going to be people that listen to this that think to themselves, first and foremost, why am I ever going to go to the hospital, right? The hospital is not going to work well for me. And then they're going to come in when they are a medical disaster, when their blood sugars are over 300, their blood pressures are over 200, and they're having stroke-like symptoms or heart attacks. And then they put their doctors and nurses between a rock and a hard place, where we now have to make decisions about giving medications that could potentially kill you, right? And I know that because we have this thing in healthcare called standard of care, what it really says is, I don't have to think about you as an individual. As long as I can prove that I would do this thing for the masses, even if I give this to you and it kills you, you can't even sue me. Stop putting that level of power when it comes to your health in other people's hands. Stop making poor choices every single day that cause your brain to wither, that causes you to have heart attacks, that causes you to have GI dysfunction, that just causes your body to break down much sooner than it should.
Yeah, you talk about how, and again, we're only starting to recognize that these aren't separate silos. And and I kind of want to bring this back to you, Dr. Carlina. Basically, what we have done, both as a society and as a healthcare community, is we run to the part that broke down. We run to the part of the body that broke down. And the only real difference, we may be struggling all from the same stress, the same anxiety, the same inflammation, the same system, to your point, Dr. Ford, that we operate in. All of us are in the same water or the same air in the same environment. The only difference is, for me, my breakdown was prostate cancer, because I had a prostate cancer experience 15 years ago. Somebody else's might be a heart attack. Somebody else's might be diabetes. But to Dr. DeYoung's point, Dr. Felice's point, it's just a matter of which part broke first. And then, of course, medical care and medical training is about, okay, you're the person we send in if it's the heart. You're the person that sends in if it's depression. You're the person we send in if it's diabetes. And now we're, I think, starting to come to the realization that while you may need to have that specialization for treatment, we have to address the larger issue that affects all of us, as opposed to waiting for the breakdown and then rushing to that location. Is that fair, Dr. Carlina?
Oh, that's more than fair, because that's exactly what it is. We are made of individual cells, but we are a whole organism, and everything is related and communicates with each other. And like you said, we address the issue that is obvious at the time. So, it's like, oh, we go to rush to put out the fire on the house that we see is on fire, not realizing that there are other houses around that are susceptible to that same fire. And we need to be more proactive about, all my houses are good right now. How do I make sure that they all are flame retardant? How do I make sure that I put the appropriate protections in place? I make sure that all the circuit breakers are working. I make sure that everything is up to code. All of that is to help prevent things from happening. And I've seen it so many times, as I'm sure the other panelists have also as well, is that um, the mental health is such a large player in the physical health and vice versa. And I would say that over 2/3 of my patients suffer from obvious mental health disorders, whether it be anxiety, depression, PTSD, and that in turn influences their eating habits, and their eating habits change their body. They may be obese. That obesity leads to high cholesterol and heart attacks and difficulty walking, and then that makes them more depressed. Also, just even the neurological functioning and signals when they are disarranged can cause problems that are not obvious at first, but you're wondering, why am I always tired? Why is my digestion all kind of wacky? And it's because sometimes it starts up here. Your cortisol levels are always on 1,000 because you're always stressed, and that can affect your gut. And then your gut isn't being taken care of, so you can't even absorb the nutrients that your body actually needs to feed your brain and have you in appropriate cognition and thinking optimally. So it's really about trying to treat the entire body, instead of waiting for one part to break down, because it's all a connected system, like you said. Once one thing goes, then other systems will follow. And you don't want to get to that point.
Yes, it's absolutely a domino effect. I mean, you talked about all of those things, but then of course, if you're tired, if you're stressed, and you're just depressed, and then somebody says to you, you can fix it all if you just go to the gym 3 days a week, and you're like, you don't feel motivated. It feels too hard, and so the more dominoes start falling, the kind of the harder it is to reverse it, and so that's
Yes.
why this prevention thing, this be proactive thing, to be in control thing is so important. I am just realizing, as someone who now can look back and realize I suffered through undiagnosed depression, that one of the things that saved me was when I did join a gym, not because I was dealing with depression, but now research has shown that was probably something that helped me struggle through something I didn't even admit I was having. So the good thing is that if you can tip the domino effect in the other direction, if you can just, before it goes too. I mean, it's never too late, but the earlier you start, the easier it is to kind of tip the dominoes in the other direction. But I want to come back to you, to Dr. Ford, again, to reiterate that this is not just a lifestyle conversation or a good feeling, how do I feel good and look good conversation and fit into the dress I wore in high school, because sometimes I think we reduce it to those types of surface benefits. And you said the fact that what we're calling wealth, real estate, business ownership, stocks and bonds, which are measures of wealth. But we learned from Steve Jobs, or Steve Jobs, I always say his name differently every time I say it, but when he passed away, we learned from people like the late CEO, Bernard Tyson, who passed away, CEO of a major company, passed away at 60 of a heart condition. That once you're sick or you're dying, none of that stuff matters. So I want to set this up. One of the panelists we had on our first virtual town hall on the economic outlook for Black Americans was Dr. Andre M. Perry, who has a new book out, you guys, if you haven't checked it out. It's called Black Power Scorecard. And he was on our first town hall. But one of the lines in that book, he says, the ultimate measure of Black power is how long you live. How long you live and how well you live. That really is the fundamental definition of economic power, or power, however you define it. And so I've been on this crusade, personally, and of course, as a representative of Black Enterprise, where I've been saying, you're not serious about wealth. You're not serious about the economic advancement of Black people and Black communities or yourself as an individual if you see this as kind of a side dish, if I can get around to it after I make my millions, I might deal with that, versus no, this is part of my strategy to live longer, to be more productive, to minimize cost, to maximize my earning capacity. How important is it to get that message deep into the culture, if you will, you talk about the culture, so that this becomes part of the natural part of our ambition, whether we want to be a successful corporate executive, whether we want to build a big stock portfolio, whether we want to be, be the next Robert Smith and be a billionaire. But none of that matters if we don't get it into family conversations, church conversation, wherever you slice it, it's not power if you're sick or you're dead.
Right. And so just to continue the conversation, let's level set again. Knowledge is power. There is power in education. There is power in information. And one of the things that we can continue to do for our Black community is disseminate information. And you heard me mention misinformation, and you heard me mention the term disinformation before. What we need to do is break the barrier of what sometimes online social media puts out, things that are falsehoods or doesn't appropriately address how we can actually come together as a community and do better for ourselves. But we really need to tap into what are the resources in our community? Who are the people that we can have as trusted voices? One of the things that I actually had in a conversation with another colleague the other day was, the message is just as important as the messenger. I'm going to say that again. The message is just as important as the messenger, because you can give people data all day about why even this information that we're sharing tonight is important, how it's going to change your life, how it's going to transform your mind, how it's going to really revolutionize the way you progress. But, if they cannot trust the messenger, it falls on deaf ears, so to speak. And so in order to gain that trust, we have to continually show up in our community. We have to continually give and advocate for those who may not be able to advocate for themselves. We have to meet people where they are. That's looking like not just doing online activities and discussions, but sometimes offline in the community, going to clinics, informing people about wealth at some of these health-related events. Because the truth of the matter is, when you think about social determinants of health, or the factors that can inform and influence your health outcomes, finance/wealth is one of those things. I go back to it again. Your zip code can affect your health outcome, where you live. So, for example, you have the DMV, known as DC, Maryland, Virginia. Those who live in DC, specifically Georgetown, DC, which is an affluent, white-centric area, very different health outcomes compared to those who live in Anacostia, Southeast DC, more higher Black population, lower income. And when you look and compare the two, you notice there's a difference in access to health care. There's a difference in access to health education, and there's a difference in the level of health literacy and the self-capacity and self-efficacy that people feel that they can have to achieve the best health outcomes. Why do I say all of this? Because in order for us to inform, you brought it up, Alfred, in order for us to inform, we have to understand informing looks as good as the community we're trying to inform. So we have to be culturally relevant, culturally sensitive, again, meeting people where they are, using different channels of communication and information, and knowing that, yes, there have been historical contexts that have been factors in some of the things that happen today. But as Dr. Philippe said, we cannot use those instances just to say, hey, I'm complacent because of history. I can't afford to do anything because history says I'm here. No. History informs the why, but the what you do is how you get the use of the information and make it the best for your health outcome. So,
to your point, Dr. Ford, and again, I refer again to Black Power Scorecard. You hear me mention it. Those in the audience, go get the book, plugging it liberally. But one of the things, Dr. Dion, that the book does, instead of just comparing Black zip codes, if you will, or Black counties in their case, versus white counties, what they did was compare what Black counties have successful outcomes, including health, versus the Black counties that don't. To say, if you look at it on a national level, obviously the disparities are obvious, but there are areas of success, and it's like if we can duplicate what's happening in certain Black counties and other counties that aren't getting those same outcomes, then we have a kind of a roadmap to improving disparities that goes further than, oh man, we're so far behind white people and there's nothing we can do. But the other point I wanted to make pertaining to that is this idea that, to Dr. Ford's point, the messenger matters. So of course we have 3 Black doctors, and who are in different aspects of the medical profession, and we still need you to do what you do, say what you say, and bring that representation. But one of the things I think we learned even during the COVID pandemic, to your point, Dr. Ford, about who the best messengers are, we needed clergy to be the one to deliver the message, and that's this case about lowering resistance to vaccination. You need business leaders to talk about, I'm not a doctor, but I'm telling you, one of the reasons I'm so successful is that I get 8 hours of sleep a night and I don't drink alcohol anymore, and I'm sharper and I'm better able to perform. It's like we need to when I say make it part of the culture, yes, doctors, including Black doctors, should motivate us and inspire us to make better decisions. But I'm saying it won't be part of the culture until business leaders, celebrities, I'm a big representative of the over 50 class who's talking about, look, if you want to look as good as I do at 65, this is what you need to be doing. How important, and let me just say this because I'm getting overly excited now. You, Dr. Duyan, are also very serious about telling your own story, not as a doctor, not as a neurologist, but as a patient who overcame health issues and came to some conclusions about how you were going to live so that you can thrive despite that.
So when I was 18, I was diagnosed with kidney failure. So I went through college in kidney failure. I went through med school in kidney failure. And 8 days after graduating from medical school, I walked into the operating room and got my first kidney transplant. And my father was my donor, who is doing well to this day. And that was almost 20 years ago. And then I had a second kidney transplant 4 years ago. And again, it was another Black man that saved my life, my cousin-in-law, and he also is doing well. But there were a lot of lessons that I learned from those 2 challenging moments in my life, right? Certainly my life was saved by these 2 men. But one of the things that I learned is people will not invest in you. And sometimes they won't save you if you don't invest in yourself first. If I was the kind of guy who, was out there not doing good things, smoking and drinking, who's going to give me a kidney? The surgeons wouldn't even do that operation if I had a donor, right? The other thing is that it's really important to have a reason to get up every single morning, to have a purpose in life. And sometimes if you can't identify what that purpose is, that means that it is your season to truly just invest in yourself. Get your body right, be very mindful about what you're reading, the content that you're taking in, the music that you listen to. All of that is going to determine how your future looks. And to the points that you guys made, that the messenger is really important. I think one of the problems in our community is that we listen to the wrong people, right? We often focus on what are the celebrities saying, right? Snoop Dogg smoking his weed all over the place. Oh, that's what I should be doing. Lil Wayne talking about, drinking scissor when he's got epilepsy, and that often is causing his seizures. That's who we look to. We've got to look to the doctors and the business people, the people who are successful, not just in entertainment, not just in sports, because they're on the front lines of what's happening every single day when it comes to our own health and wealth. They're the ones that are going to tell you and teach you how to overcome some of the challenges that we face, right? When I was on dialysis, I saw people every single day. They were just waiting for death. There are people that don't even want the option of kidney transplant because they don't know what it looks like on the other side. When I was on dialysis, I did make certain decisions. One was, I'm not going to do dialysis the way that I saw everybody else do it. I'm not just going to be waiting for death to come and get me. I traveled on dialysis. I had a news agency following me on dialysis. I still saw patients on dialysis. I took meetings in dialysis centers, right? Our thoughts are so incredibly powerful that they will allow us to overcome any challenge that we face. They will motivate the actions that we take. And from the moment that we are born, people are fighting to control the way that we think, because they know if they can control the way that we think, then they can control the way that we act, whether it's our parents, in our schools and our teachers, our bosses and colleagues, whether it's politicians, all are fighting for control of our brains. And at some point, we need to become accountable for our own thoughts, our own actions, and take charge of our brains. So that way we can truly create the lives that we want for ourselves. That's how we move beyond all of this. I think one of the things that we often neglect is that people have been brainwashed to think certain things about who they are, what they're capable of, and what health means for them. Right? We always talk about genetics. Well, you know what's much more important than genetics is the ideas that you got about drinking soda, eating Chinese food, eating fast food, not exercising, drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes or cigars. That information that you got from your family will determine your health more than the genes that they gave you.
Oh yeah, I tell people all the time. Again, most people who follow me know I'm into natural bodybuilding, and I told them the first thing I learned was that genetics is the floor, it's not the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
It's the maybe 20%, maybe 15% that you have no control over, and then there's another 80 to 85% that is totally within your control. The other thing about the way we think, the way we're taught to think, the way the society reinforces how to think, and you guys you're going to identify with this right away. When you get on this path, you're the nut. It's health nuts. It don't take all that. Oh, it's not fun, or the things, again, you talk about the things that enter our mind that determine our behaviors. If it's good for you, it probably tastes bad. And if it's, all of those messages that we know are not true, but are a function of the constant battle. And it's like you said, Dr. Ford, this is not just history. This is messaging that we're facing every day. I know when I was living my prostate cancer experience, and the thing is, I never got sick. I didn't get sick before. I never got sick after. Is they caught it so early that I was never symptomatic. But I still live with the knowledge that I had cancer in my body. And to your point, Dr. Ford, I had to think about, is this one where I'm going to surrender? And that is, let me start calling everybody and telling everybody, get ready, I'm on the way out. Am I going to be neutral and just kind of say, well, I don't want to die, but I'm not going to necessarily do anything proactive? Or am I going to proactively live my life? And that's saying, I'm going to intentionally eat the things that is best for me. I'm going to work out. I'm not going to be like, well, it doesn't matter. I got cancer, so why do I go to the gym? And as a result, nobody knew that I was living with the diagnosis, because my lifestyle, not only did it not get less healthy, it got more healthy, because it was like, what did I do to get the best possible outcome? And so I tell people all the time, and I want to kind of get into this, Dr. Carina, about the difference between I'm choosing to live in a very active way. I think to myself, every decision I make from how long I sleep every day, to who I talk to every day, to what music I listen to every day, I'm a journalist, and I still don't watch more than 25 minutes of news every day, because I'm like, anything more than that is probably not going to be good for my mental health, which is going to have a domino effect. Talked about, because now I'm trying to get into what we want people to leave with, which is to do hopefully something different at the end of this conversation than they did when they first started listening to it. And what part of it is, like, when we say Black Lives Matter, we don't just mean we don't want to be unjustly murdered by law enforcement or a criminal. It should be, no, my life matters. That's why I'm going to get at least 7 hours of sleep a night. My life matters. That's why I'm going to eat this and not that. My life matters. That's why I'm going to walk at least 5,000 steps a day. That eventually my life matters. That's why I'm not going to go here. I'm going to go there. I'm not going to go to the bar. I'm going to go to the gym. Whatever that is, my life matters. Talk about, and again, it's not easy, but you're with your husband, a health company, a vitamin company, that part of its mission is not just to sell product, but to change thinking and culture so we can get better outcomes.
Yeah, so I love this aspect of the conversation because being healthy doesn't happen by accident. And like you said, everything is intentional. So do I want a glass of water with what I'm eating, or do I want a can of soda? Do I want to take the stairs, or do I want to take the elevator? Do I want to um, you know, have a drink? It's only one versus no, I don't want to have a drink, or I don't want to have three drinks. I'll stop with one. I mean, everybody has, what they deem to be enough, but I think with that intentionality, the source of it, I find, has to do with our perceived self-worth. And a lot of people struggle with whether they know it or not. Do they really love themselves to feel that they deserve a healthy life? And trying to instill that power into people that you have the autonomy, you have the power to make decisions for yourself that will change the trajectory of your life. So if you take care of your body will take care of you. And something I'd like to say is the love of my life is the love of my life. So when you love something, that's how you treat it. When you value something, you take care of it. But you have to believe that you're worth these things. And if you honestly believe, you know what, I'm worth, living till however, I'm worth not being on medications, I'm worth not being in pain, then it's your responsibility and hopefully should be almost a reflex to do the things that are loving. So eating right is a loving behavior. It's not destructive. Um, like I said, getting enough sleep, making sure that you're being active enough to help support your heart health. Because once your heart stops beating, it's lights out. Smoking, making sure that I don't want to smoke and I don't want to be around people who also smoke because that does affect me. So it's not an all or nothing, but there are levels to everything, but you are making these decisions. You're making decisions from the moment you wake up. You're deciding what you're going to wear. You're deciding what if you're going to brush your teeth, how you're going to brush your teeth. You're bathing, your first meal, your last meal. Everything is a choice that you're making. And there are good choices, mid choices, and not so great choices. And no one is perfect. But do you love yourself enough to take the moment to say, you know what, this better choice, and I compound those better choices on a regular basis, are going to pay out infinitely so in the future. So the future me is going to thank me for the things that I'm doing now because I love myself enough to do these things to continue to love myself and love the body and the health that I'm in later on.
So what we're talking about is mindfulness and intentionality.
Yes.
Nobody's really waking up and saying, I'm trying to destroy myself every day.
Mm-mm.
It's mostly like we're not really thinking about it. We're mindful.
Exactly.
We're mindless. We're just not being
It's an
mindful
afterthought.
and intentional. Same thing with and again in the financial space, most of us aren't trying to blow our budget. We're just not really paying attention to how we spend our money. And next thing you know, hey, how did all this money go? Why are my bills piling? Why am I overdrafted on my credit cards? It's not because most people are not actively being irresponsible financially. They're being mindless and unintentional. And part of the beauty of when you get on this health path is that, like you said, it starts out with one small thing. I mean, people see me bodybuilding and, they see the trophies in the background. I'm like, no, that's not where it started. It started with one day I said, you know what? I want to be around to play basketball in the driveway with my then newborn son, who's now 33. And by the way, I stopped playing with him when I realized he could beat me. So he's never beaten me. When I realized I was going to beat him, I said, okay, that's enough of that. But it was a little thing that said, let me take one action in that direction. And the reason I'm bringing this up and I want to take this to you, Dr. Ford. If there's another, let me say, criticism about the way this message has been delivered historically, is that too much of it has been focused on what's going to happen to you if you don't do it. Or if you don't eat right, you're going to get the sugars. If you don't do this, you're going to, and it becomes a conversation about the bad things that are going to happen to you if you don't. And men in particular, and Black men in particular, since they don't want to have that conversation, then they just avoid going to the doctor. They're like, I don't need you to tell me about all the bad things that's going to happen because I enjoy a cigar every once in a while. So I avoid the conversation. But my thing is, and is what I try to do even on my social media, is to brag about the good stuff that happens because of the lifestyle that I lead. The fact, and Dr. Carlina, you hit on it, I have no aches and pains at 65. I jump up and I'm fine. Every time I go to the doctor or for a checkup or whatever, they almost can't believe that I don't have any prescription drugs. They're like, what do you mean? Because to them, the standard is if you're past 50, you got to be on something. So I don't have to worry about that. My health insurance costs are low. My medical expenses are low. I'm having fun. I take joy in the fact that I don't use luggage with wheels on it because I like doing the farmer's walk. I don't do the moving walkway. I walk. And now it's not a chore. It's a joy. It's a pleasure. It's reinforcing. So, Dr. Ford, when you talk about the message and the messenger, how important is it for us to focus more on the benefits of making better choices as opposed to what's the bad thing that's going to happen to you if you don't?
Sure. So positive reframing, it's such an essential topic where you're taking something that might be more preachy, so to speak, such as lay off the sugars, lay off the salt, and if you don't do it, this bad thing will happen to you. Positive reframing says, if this happens, you're going to be able to enjoy and reap the benefits. And there's this technique that I learned a long time ago. Some of the other physicians here may know about it. Positive reframing through motivational interviewing. So it's this concept that when I talk to you, I'm basically selling the health idea in a way that makes you feel as if you're going to do it for the benefits of your grandchildren or for the benefits of your future, enjoying retirement. It's to sell this idea of how do I increase the self-efficacy, the ability that someone feels to take control of their own health. And it goes back to what I said before about taking control of your health. How do you take control of your health? And part of taking control is engaging in conversations where you can feel as if you have the capability or capacity to take the health into your own hands. So I like the high blood pressure example or the diabetes example where, we have been used to, as a population for some time, the preachy mentality, so to speak. As I said, something bad will happen, detrimental if you don't do this. Now, disclaimer, for some of us, that is warranted because some of us are just stubborn. We don't listen. We don't take in that softer approach. But for others, the harder approach or the more direct approach sometimes doesn't work because nothing bad has happened to us. So why should I listen to you? I've been smoking cigarettes for the past 30 years. I've been drinking alcohol every day. I have been eating the Chinese food with high saturations of salt and other cholesterol every day. Nothing's happened to me. Why should I change? Well, instead of us having that negative reframing, all these bad things will happen, let's focus on the positive. And research has shown, because I like to talk about research. Research has shown that the more likely you are to showcase the positive effects of health outcomes to someone before they engage in the health behavior change, the more likely they are to make the change once they see that they can visualize themselves doing the activity to get to the outcome. So it's important. And I personally believe that there might be multiple methods that can be used, as I said, because we're all different people. No one is built the same. But just as Dr. Dion said, your brain is such an important factor in your health. And if you can train your brain and train your thinking to say, I know I may not have come from the family that was the healthiest. I know I may have some predispositions to poorer health outcomes, but I also know I have today. I have right now, and with that right now, I can make a change that can allow me to overcome the past. And so with that, I just think positive reframing is such an effective tool that we can use in our own communities to set forth the best health outcomes for ourselves.
And part of that positive reframing, and I'll throw this over to you, Dr. Philippe, is not only I have now, but I can change. And now we're going back to the whole multi-generational aspect. Everybody likes to talk about multi-generational wealth. And when I talk about multi-generational health, and I give my own personal example, I didn't find out until after my diagnosis that both my father and my grandfather had prostate cancer. Different outcomes because there was different eras, different treatments available for each generation. But I didn't know my family history until after my diagnosis. And an example of this being a multi-generational health conversation is, of course, my son knows, and I'm already like, don't sleep on this, start getting screened early, here's what you need to know. And my son has a son, my only grandchild is a boy. So now there's a chance to not only, to your point, Dr. Ford, change the now, but to actually, as the faith community says, break generational curses by saying, hey, this is not just about me having a better outcome. I can change the course of outcomes for future generations of my family on the health front as much as I'm trying to do it on the wealth front. And so, if you can lean into that, Dr. Dion, just talk about this. The win, the upside for this is tremendous. Again, we can't change the past. We can't change what happened with grandma and grandpa and big mama, and who had to get an amputated foot or whatever. We can't change that, but we are perfectly positioned and empowered with more information, more resources, more access than we ever had before, even with the disparities that Dr. Ford has eloquently outlined, to change the future, to change and advance future generations. And isn't that what it's all about?
Absolutely. And I love that you guys talk about positive reframing. I never use it.
I know. Dr. Dion is not what you go to.
Don't drink because it's going to cause this, and this. But, to your point, I think it's incredibly important, the stories that we share with our families and with our friends. One of the things I think in our culture is we hold things in. We don't tell people when we're struggling. We don't tell people about the health issues that we're having. And all of a sudden, somebody 30 gets something and they're like, where did this come from? And you see that multiple people in their families have this. We have the ability to change our own lives, and we have the ability to change the lives of the future generations, of our children, of our children's children. And it doesn't take a lot. The reality is, like, we look at, the latest health trend. What should we be taking? What should we be drinking? Where should we be going? What gym should we be going to? But you don't need any of that. Can you imagine if first thing in the morning you went out and got a healthy dose of sunlight? Sun is our greatest source of nourishment. Can you imagine if you went for a walk in nature? That is so relaxing for your central nervous system, your brain and your spinal cord. It activates your parasympathetic nervous system. Your blood pressure comes down. Your cortisol levels come down. Can you imagine you go exercising? You don't need to go to the gym. Go for a run around your block. Do some squats outside. Go play with your children, whether it's basketball or football or whatever you want to do with your kids. There are things that you can do every single day that are going to impact your life. And it doesn't take any external resources. Make sure you get a good night's sleep. And then you can teach your future, your children and your grandchildren about how important those things are every single day. A lot of what we need to do comes from within us. It has nothing to do with anybody else. It has nothing to do with these outside systems. But we need to believe that we are capable of doing these things. We need to believe that we are worthy of doing these things. We do need to love ourselves, because when we don't love ourselves and we end up in a system that doesn't love us, we're asking the system to do a job that we're not even willing to do. And then we get upset when it doesn't work out in our favor. We need to love ourselves first and do the things that we need to do for us every single day.
So let's as we come down the home stretch of this conversation, talk about what that looks like. That taking actions that are life affirming, affirms our worth, helps us to love ourselves by loving our life. And part of that, and it's going to take courage. Like I said, we live in systems and cultures that push against that, maybe even ridicule that. And I'll use myself as kind of the example. As I got into my 40s and started thinking about redesigning my life, and a lot of it's around what's going to make me healthy and productive in the long run. And it meant me make some decisions about, first of all, I'm going to get at least 6 hours of sleep, mostly times 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, which means there are going to be certain things that I used to do at that time that I'm not going to do anymore. I do get up in the morning. My routine is I get up. I don't schedule anything interactive before 11 o'clock, meaning no meetings, no calls, unless I'm getting paid a bonus, meaning if you really want to pay me extra to do it, I'll do it. But if I get to plan my work day the way that works for me, I don't plan anything before 11. So 11, I have a good, healthy breakfast. I was that guy that used to skip breakfast and not eat until later in the day and then end up eating bad things. So no, I'm going to get up. It's going to be go out and catch some sun, 15, 20 minutes on, porch or a deck if I'm not going into our office. I'm going to take, for me, some whether it's meditation, but I'll get up and do a quiet prayer. My breakfast is leisurely. I have a rule. I don't eat at my desk. I don't eat in front of my computer. When it's time to eat, stop and eat. Water for, throughout the day, stop and drink some water. It wasn't an overnight thing. It was built bit by bit by bit until it became a lifestyle that made me more productive. I mean, if you're a baby boomer, you came up in the generation where your value was measured by how many hours you would put in without sleep. I just remember bragging about only getting 4 hours of sleep a night and still, yeah, I went to bed at 3 a.m, but I still got in here on time. Why are you late? Not realizing the damage to my brain in particular. Now we know all kinds of things about, but also my damage to my performance that day, that I was talking to myself and I think I was being productive, but I really wasn't. So, without me, just telling you about my whole life, which anybody who listens to my shows or follows my social media can find that out for themselves. Dr. Carina, I want you to talk about having, you already said, the self-love and the courage, and we're going to get into at least telling people some things that should be non-negotiables in their life. Drinking water and being hydrated with water every day should be a non-negotiable. Getting at least 7 good hours of restful sleep a night should be a non-negotiable. But if you don't make it a non-negotiable, nobody else is, because their agenda is not necessarily going to serve your agenda. So I want each of you in your own way to talk about some things that we got to start making non-negotiables to get the outcomes that we want.
Definitely. There's a book that I read called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's about trauma and all that stuff, but you can break it down to anything. Every action that you do is going to have an effect, whether it be positive or negative. And you want to stack as many good habits and good activities so that you are stacking the deck with the positive actions that will lead to positive results. So, yeah, I had potato chips today, but if I had potato chips every day, that's going to add up. My body will remember that salt and those calories in a different way than if I had eaten something that was more nutritious, or if I had made other options. So like you said, with sleep deprivation, your body, you may not feel it now, but eventually your body will feel the effects of not getting enough restful sleep. Sleep hygiene, I think, is something that people don't talk about, and it's way underrated. And like you said, meditation. There's just so many things that it's like adding, pennies to a jar. Yeah, it's pennies now, but if you're like my dad, who used to have this cookie tin full of coins, and then he would go to the bank and just, hand them over, he was getting bills back. And I was like, how does that work? It's because it's all cumulative. It's like compounded interest. And that
Yes.
can go in the good way and it can go in the bad way. So the same thing with less positive actions and behaviors can pile on to the illness and the not feeling well and to decreasing your health span. And like you said, you can't do everything all at once. It's overwhelming to think that, you know what, I had this conversation, and I'm going to change my whole life. Not going to happen. But be committed to changing one thing at a time. Whether it's, I drink 5 sodas a week, I'm going to cut back to two. I eat out 4 or 5 days a week. I'm going to cook at home 3 to 4 times more than I usually would. I'm going to purposefully park my car further away from the entrance, unless I have a disability of some sort, just to get extra steps in. And once you start doing these things, you realize not only are you helping yourself, but you feel better, and you start to see like it's almost like playing spades, the score sheet is going to start to rack up in your favor when you start implementing these little things. And they don't have to be huge, but they have to be intentional, because you have to be aware that something has to change. And then after your body gets used to it, it's like no big deal. People are like, oh, I'm so used to the sugar. Yeah, in the beginning, you might go through withdrawals and you really crave it. But after a while, your body kind of resets what that normal is, and you no longer crave it as much. And it's easier to stick to a lot of these habits. If you say, you know what, I'm gonna walk every morning, or I'm gonna walk at least 3 times a week, and you set that commitment to yourself and you keep that commitment, it becomes another habit, like habit stacking. And it's really about making these part of your lifestyle. So when I say the word diet to anyone, but especially to my patients, a diet to me is not something that you do for a short amount of time and then you're off back to what you were doing. A diet is your lifestyle, your way of eating. Your everyday diet should be something sustainable and good for you for the most part into perpetuity. So being cognizant of the things you can do better and then tackling them one thing at a time, before you know it, you've changed so many things. And the sum of all of those things can really pay out in dividends. They say what an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yes. Yes.
And really setting your mind on, I'm trying to do better on the front, so I don't have to pay it on the back end in a different way. And it helps when you have other people in your circle who are also of the same mind. I find it very challenging when you feel like you're the only person in your orbit who is on this healthier track, because it's very easy to backslide. So I think we need to be more as a community and supportive with each other, which not only helps the group, but it also helps with sustaining these habits. So everyone in the group has a similar mindset, and you can kind of keep it going for longer than just the moment. And you can spread it to your kids and to their kids, like, the whole generational aspect of it is really groupthink and good of the group.
So you hit on a couple of points. One is start small, start somewhere, because once you get started, habits tend to build. It's that positive domino effect that I mentioned earlier. Two, and this is what I love about social media. People complain about social media and it's all negativity. I say it's only negativity based on who you choose to follow. So a big part of my motivation is following people who are living kind of the same lifestyle, dealing with the same challenges, and they, this is what I do. This is what I found out helps me to get, add protein to my diet, in a cheap and fun way. And you're building what I call finding your tribe, which is your point about finding people who are like-minded. And I want to move on to you, Dr. Dion, because one of the other things people are looking for, I tell people, don't chase perfection. Part of almost the negativity of the fitness influencer culture is this idea that there's a perfect workout, and if you're not doing this workout, or if you're not doing this kind of exercise this way, then you're not going to get the outcomes that you want. And so people come to me and say, well, what's the best workout? And I tell them the best workout is the one you're going to do. Yeah. And whether it's swimming, whether it's walking, whether it's playing with your kid, there's no perfect workout. It's the perfect workout is the one you're going to do. That's going to become a habit, to Dr. Carlina's point. Again, what are some of the things you see as kind of necessary approaches to this to help people start adopting the lifestyle that matters?
Yeah, I think oftentimes we think we've got to make these big radical changes. And the reality is that small changes have a big impact. So I had a patient who had lifelong epilepsy. She was having seizures all the time. She had 2 brain surgeries to try to cure her seizures. And when I saw her, and neither of those surgeries worked, when I saw her, she was on seven different anti-seizure medications. All I did was I took soda out of her diet, and she went seizure-free for 6 months. 6 months later, she ended back in my ER, and I said, let's say her name was Jamie. I said, Jamie, what are you doing back here? And she said to me, you will never take soda out of my diet again. Small changes have big impacts, but you have to be ready to make those changes. Because if you're not ready to take away the thing that is causing your illness to begin with, then it's going to be really, really difficult for you, right? One of the things that I talk about all the time, and you know this, Alfred, is you need to stop drinking alcohol. Everybody needs to stop taking in this poison. I don't care if it's 1 drink a day, like this idea that they sold you on 1 drink a day is good for your heart is absolute nonsense. Alcohol causes dementia, causes heart disease, causes gut dysfunction. One of the things that we never talk about is how it causes dysfunction in our hormones. You want to be wealthy? It takes a certain level of testosterone to be wealthy. We have seen testosterone levels in men go down over the last few decades. Alcohol decreases testosterone. And, you know, when testosterone levels are low, your libido is going to be low. It doesn't matter if you were taking whatever pills that the doctors are prescribing you so you can get it on with your partner. If you're drinking, you're not going to be able to get it on with your partner. And you know where your partner goes? To people who don't have that problem. So if you want to be successful, if you want to be, you know, healthy and wealthy, there are things that you need to do. And I'm a big believer that alcohol is one of those things you need to take out of your life. I tried, Alfred, to positively reframe that.
I don't know if there's a way to do it. Again, you're very direct at the Excel Summit for Men, and they're like, oh my God, this guy's not pulling any punches. But I got to say, I'm someone who was never a drinker. I mean, most people thought I didn't drink. But the truth was I just drank so little that you didn't think I drink. And this goes back to, again, our willingness to push back on the expectations of the people around us and try to find people who are going to reinforce behavior. I was very public about this on social media. It was last year that I said, I'm officially not drinking again. And a lot of people were like, we didn't know you even drank. I said, no, but I'm officially doing it because I realized, as someone who didn't drink much, I had to ask myself, well, why, if you don't drink much, why do you drink at all? And the truth was, I felt like I was making other people uncomfortable, and they do make you feel uncomfortable. You know, if I say I don't abuse my partner, nobody asks me why. But if I say, no, I don't want to drink, oh, what's up, man? Why? You sure? Why don't you know? And again, I realized that even with my whole, I want to be healthy, a big part of my habit was I didn't want to feel weird. I didn't want to make other people feel uncomfortable. And I was willing to do something that wasn't good for me and that I didn't enjoy. And so I really want to emphasize the importance that you're going to face resistance from people you love, from people you know, from people you respect, when you decide to take this different path. And you got to kind of be okay with it because of the self-love and the self-worth aspect. And by the way, for every person that's pushing up back against you changing this lifestyle, I've learned there's 5 other people that saw what you did, watched what you do, and said quietly, I'm going to do what he does. I'm going to do what she does because I want that outcome. And so it does have to be a certain amount of confidence that you're helping people, because it's not the most vocal people that you may be influenced. It's the person that's watching quietly. Again, your child, your cousin, your best friend, who is like, I don't have the courage to do it out loud, but I'm going to do it because I admire what this person did. And I want to transition to you, Dr. Ford, because while we didn't create the conditions that got us here, and we can't control everything, what the healthcare system does and what, all the things. But we do still have a responsibility to be mindful and to be active and intentional about paying attention to the policies and the laws and the practices that negatively impact our communities. And so we can't just stick our head in the sand and say, well, I can't control that. We can influence policy. A big part of the core of your work is to understand that policy and do something about it. What are some things that we should be doing as an empowered community? The Black enterprise community obviously is filled with influencers, entrepreneurs, leaders, decision makers in various circles who can influence and change the environment and the policies. What are some of the things that we need to be intentionally focused on?
I'm so glad you asked. I'm so glad you asked. Because we live in a time when it's so important to actually understand how to be someone who can advocate for the policies that are affecting you. So the first thing I would say, get to know your local leaders. Get to know your local leaders, your local policy leaders at the state level, at the county level, at the city level, and even the smaller municipalities. Get to know your local leaders. You'll be surprised how many people don't know their local leaders. Those are the same people who on election day or certain times they cast ballots and not knowing who they're casting ballots for. Get to know those people. The second thing is attend local community events, public hearings. Sometimes they'll have policy discussions, community councils, city council. You just want to make sure that you're always in the mix because, if we are truly trying to build any community that is for us, we need to voice our opinion. You can't just sit back and it's kind of like when you think about the elections from the past, 2 or 3 even national cycles, there have been a lot of Black voters that said, oh, why should I vote? My vote doesn't matter. My vote doesn't count. My vote won't make a difference. Well, that's where I'm here to say, hold on, no, your voice does count. Your voice does matter, and your voice can make a difference. But it can only make a difference if you're willing to start putting yourself into those attending those different events I mentioned. And third thing, after you get to know who your local leaders are, and after you're starting to attend some of those local policy events, try to see who is around you that can be an extra step into the door of knowing more information, whether it's a person, whether it's an organization that can actually help hold your hand and walk you through the process. Because a lot of individuals don't know they can write letters to their local leaders. A lot of people don't know they can write emails to the local leaders to voice their concerns, leave messages on phones. Like, when it came to situations like COVID, when it came to situations even with the recent HR 1 and Medicaid and OBBB, One Big Beautiful Bill, there were people who looked like us, Black Americans, that wrote to their leaders just to voice their concerns about the need for information, about the need to distinguish between what is the misinformation, what's the actual information that is needed to guide us. And also, the importance of me saying all this is because as the community, as part of the Black American population, in order for policy to be effective, it needs to look like the people it's serving.
Yes.
I'm going to leave you with that. In order for policy to be effective, it needs to look like the people it's serving. And so if your voice isn't being heard, what sometimes happens a lot is you're overseen, you're overlooked because it didn't seem, quote unquote, right, like your voice was that important anyway, because it was never heard, because you never advocated for anything, or you didn't push to support something that could benefit your people, for your community, for your time. So always make sure that you can advocate as loudly as possible.
It's that thing, if you look like you don't care, the assumption is going to be that you don't care, no matter what the actual result or impact is apparent on you. And again, that self-love is also self-advocacy in the public square. Self-love is both self-advocacy in the voting booth. It's self-love all around, because every decision you make is either expanding your health and longevity or reducing your health and longevity. And I'll throw in my good sense, because I hinted at it earlier. When I talk to a leader in any space, business, religion, faith, politics, I want to know what your health and longevity agenda is for yourself and your constituents. I'm not going to brag about my pastor, Andrew Hunt, Liberty Baptist Church of Chicago, but he has an intentional message around the well-being of the congregation, and something as simple as what should be served at the church dinner. What should be available, what shouldn't you should play down. As Dr. Carina said, you may not be able to say, well, you're a bad person if you drink that soda, but you can make sure there's a whole bunch of other healthy options, and then create a culture in whatever constituency you serve that says, what we want for you is to live longer, to be healthy, to have as many of those years to be disease-free as possible. And on top of that, by the way, and I say this all the time, being healthy doesn't mean you'll never get sick.
Mm.
Being healthy doesn't mean you'll never be injured. We all know examples, and I could say both I and Dr. Yon are living proof. It's about your resiliency in the face of illness or injury. It's being able to get through it and come back and be as a strong, or maybe in some cases stronger and more capable than you went in. So, a lot of people are like, well, you work out every day and you still got sick. I'm like, yeah, I had COVID 3 times during the pandemic that I know of, because there's the times when you don't know whether you got it or not because you can't get tested. But it was like, it's the resilience that we're talking about, not that you'll never get sick, not that you'll never get injured. And so, again, I challenge all leaders and all people who influence in every space to love yourself enough to have a health and longevity plan and intentionality for yourself. But also, as Dr. Carina said, let's be a positive influence and reinforce one another. How about when somebody says, no, thank you, I don't want to drink, just say, okay, cool, as opposed to why. How about when you say, no, I'm going to get my sleep in, you don't come back to them, well, you can sleep when you're dead. Me and Dr. have this old thing about this mindset, you'll sleep when you're dead. And I say, well, you're going to be dying a lot sooner if you keep that mindset. Maybe if you can't say something to reinforce the behaviors, we at least refrain from doing things that might discourage others. So that's my 2 cents. All 3 doctors, anything else you'd like to add before we wrap?
I just want to say to those listening, please never be afraid to ask questions, because I think curiosity is something that we also have to consider. We talked about taking control of your health, but I want you to be curious about your health, because through curiosity, you'll learn about people like Dr. Dion, Dr. Carina. You'll learn about different methodologies and different ways of thinking that can help you go from where you are, as I said before, to where you need to be. So curiosity, don't let your curiosity die. That means your curiosity for yourself now, for your future family. If you don't have, children yet, or grandchildren, or your current family, your mom, dad, sister, brother, things that you can help to influence the factors that you're already dealing with to have the best possible outcomes that you can have for your own being. So I'd say I leave people with that.
And as you give your final remarks, also, you guys all know that I follow all of you on social because you're great. Let people know where they can find you on social and any place else you think they should check out. So Dr. Ford, because that's how I found out about you. I'm a big fan of yours on Instagram.
Thank you so much. I'm primarily on Instagram. I actually just launched a TikTok, but Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, Dr. Michael H. Ford, where you can tap in with me for more health information and also health stories that center around our Blackness.
Guys, you'll be informed, but you will be entertained. So it's just a fun feed to follow. Dr. Carina.
I just want to say that give yourself grace. None of us are perfect. And even if every day you've lived before today, you didn't live it the way you should have or to the best, doesn't mean that for the rest of today or if tomorrow you wake up, you can't make different choices. So it's never too late to do better for yourself. And it's never too late to encourage the ones that you love, that you see suffering, that they can do better as well. So it's like every time the sun rises and you're blessed enough to wake up, that's another chance, that's another opportunity to do it better, to do it different. And don't harp on all the things that you have done. It doesn't matter. You can't go backwards and we can't promise tomorrow. So focus on what you can do now and today, keeping the future in mind. Because, like we've all said, our health is our most important asset. And despite what social media will tell you, looking cute, the best clothes, the best hair, the best cars, the best trips are nice, but there are a lot of cute people in caskets. There are a lot of people who, are dead and gone and leaving all of their luxurious things for everybody else. So you are here on this earth to serve, but you're also here for yourself. And you should be able to nurture yourself to get the most out of it. Because we're here once. You don't have, like last I heard, you don't have like a backup plan B body someplace.
Right.
You got one. So treat it like it's your only one. Don't treat it like a side piece. Treat it like it's your main thing. But you can find us on ProBlack Health, PROBLK, health.com. And if you use the code Black Enterprise, that will give you 25% off of everything on the website. We're also on all the socials, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Same thing, ProBlack Health, PROBLK Health. Dr. Carlina is also on Instagram and TikTok. But I just want you all to just know that you have more power than you realize to change your life, for not just for now, but going forward. And you can change other people's lives if you just pay attention and are intentional about what you are doing.
You hit on that term that's very well known in Black culture called being casket sharp. When somebody sees you and people are, oh, Black don't crack, and I'm like, no, you're right. The outside don't crack. It's the inside though. It doesn't matter how we look on the outside if the inside is not working well. Dr. Dion.
I would say in order to have the kind of powerful mind that allows you to create health and wealth for yourself and your future generations, you want to have a healthy brain. And the way that you do that is you've got to move your body, you've got to eat healthy, you got to make sure you get enough sleep, you've got to avoid toxic substances, you've got to be mindful of the content you take in, but you also have to surround yourself with really good, positive people. Our brains start to operate at the same frequency as the people that we surround ourselves with. So we start to think like them and we start to act like them. And so just be mindful of who you have around you. And so you can find me at drphilippeDion.com. If you put in the coupon code Black Enterprise, we will give you 25% off our signature course called Take Charge of Your Brain. You can also find me on Instagram and TikTok, as well as Facebook and LinkedIn.
And as Dr. Dion said earlier, you'll benefit, but he may not always, he's not there to make you feel good all the time. But very, very useful content. As you know, I reshare your content, particularly on Instagram and LinkedIn, all the time. All three of you, and even though Dr. Ford, I'm just getting to know you over the last 5 or 6 months, but all three of you are doing great work. You personally enhanced my health and fitness journey. People that know me well know that my actual goal is to live to a robust 104. And you got to be very intentional about trying to last another 4 decades. And so, who knows whether I'll achieve that, but it won't be for lack of trying. And each of you are just instrumental to my personal journey. And I'm just a big fan and champion of the work that you do. Thank you so much. Thank you from everyone at Black Enterprise for being part of this virtual town hall focused on health and wealth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for our latest Black Enterprise Virtual Town Hall, Investing in Our Health to Grow Our Wealth, hosted by our partners at Nationwide. We hope you're leaving this discussion with greater clarity and confidence in your pursuit of better economic outcomes for you and your family, the broader Black community, and ultimately our entire nation. Remember to subscribe to Black Enterprise on YouTube to watch the playback of today's town hall, as well as all of our video interviews and virtual events on demand. For the latest information on upcoming Black Enterprise in-person events, including the Excel Summit for Men, the Be Smart HBCU Hackathon, and the Women of Power Summit, go to blackenterprise.com/BE events. Again, thank you so much for joining us. All the best to you and yours from all of us at Black Enterprise as we celebrate 55 years of elevating your excellence.